You're listening to the Sisters-in-Laws podcast, a faith-based podcast that spotlights Black women who replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Black women experience miscarriage and stillbirth 4 to 5 times more likely than white women, according to the NIH and CDC. Whether you've experienced a miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, are trying to conceive, or have an infertility diagnosis, you will learn about resources and strategies to heal, gain clarity, peace, hope, and find an empowering path forward after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee, and you will hear me interview sisters-in-laws who have healed from such a painful and traumatic experience by sharing their testimonies and stories to inspire and help others turn their pain into their purpose. Now let's get started. Welcome to episode 216 of the Sisters-in-Laws podcast. Do you know what a placental abruption is? Placental abruption is a serious pregnancy complication in which the placenta detaches from the womb or the uterus. It occurs when it detaches from the inner wall before delivery. It can deprive the baby of oxygen and nutrients, and some symptoms include vaginal bleeding, belly pain, back pain, typically happening in the last 12 weeks of pregnancy. Depending on the degree of placental separation and how close the baby is to full term, treatment may be bed rest or a C-section. Today's guest experienced a placental abruption of her daughter. Leslie Damper found out she was becoming a mother in August 2020, and by November 2020, she was called home due to a placental abruption. In this episode, Leslie takes us back on the joy she experienced when she found out she was pregnant and to the day she lost her baby girl. She shares in this episode how she overcame fear and weakness and how she is not giving up hope of becoming a mother again. This episode is for you to listen to if you've ever experienced a placenta abruption. Here is Leslie Damper. Well, welcome, Leslie, to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, my name is Leslie. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I am an entrepreneur. I own my own business. I'm a cosmetologist, a stylist here in St. Louis. And I love sports. I love to be around family. I love hanging around friends and just enjoying life.
So I know that we all have a story to tell, so I would love for you to share your journey to motherhood and your lost story with us.
Okay. Well, I always knew that I wanted to be a mom, just being raised by my own mother. She taught me a lot, and I was excited to pass that down to the next generation. So in 2020, June 2020, actually July, I found out that my boyfriend and I were expecting our child, and it was it was very, very exciting. It was my first time being pregnant, my first time, going through all the different journeys and symptoms of pregnancy. So we were definitely excited about that. My sister was excited. We told my mom by getting her a little onesie that said, "Don't worry, Grandma got it," and that's how she thought how she was going to be a grandmother. So as time started to progress, I got bigger and everything like that. Of course, we're in the midst of a pandemic, and doctors' visits were very different. And I started going to one hospital, OBGYN, I should say, and I decided that I wanted to do a natural water birth. And the OBGYN who I was going to didn't do that. So I found a birthing center here in St. Louis, and I decided to finish the rest of my appointments there. So around November 2020, I was 22 weeks. I started to experience like different symptoms that were weird. So I initially thought it was just like a cold or sinuses. I have sinuses really, really bad and allergies. And of course, allergy season, because in St. Louis, in Missouri, period, there's the weather is in extremely crazy. Like one day it could be 50 degrees, next day it'll be like 80. So I'm thinking, yeah, the weather is just got my immune system in all different types of ways. But around like the third day, it started to feel really, really weird. And I decided to take a COVID test. And of course, they don't give it to you for like 3 days. So I took it on Thursday. And well, let me back up. So that Tuesday, my anatomy appointment was Wednesday. And my mom went with me because she was going to be the one to do our gender reveal. So she went with me and found out that it was a girl. And Thursday, I took a COVID test. So Wednesday is the anatomy scan. My mom found out it was a girl. Thursday, I took a COVID test. And Friday, I pretty much just rested all day at home because it was different. I lost my taste of smell. I lost my sense of smell. Um, and I lost my taste. I couldn't taste anything. And at that point, I knew that I had COVID, but I didn't get my results until Monday. So Friday, I pretty much just rested all day. And Saturday, we had a gender reveal. And because I figured that I had COVID, we just did it outside. Like I stayed in the house and looked out from my door. And my mom and my boyfriend, my niece and my sister and my best friends were there. And the rest of the family were on Zoom. And we did a gender reveal, found out it was a girl. That was Saturday. So after the gender reveal, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to rest the remaining days and I'm not going to do anything. But Saturday night, it got so bad that I I was having chills. My fever was sky high. And before then, Monday, they called me and said that I tested positive for COVID. And it was kind of like surreal because I knew I had it, but it was like I needed that the medical confirmation. So I got on the phone with the urgent care who called me, and then I called my midwife. And I was telling them what was going on, and they were saying, well, the only way you should come in is if you're having shortness of breath, or you can go get, I think it's a abdometer, where you put it on your finger, and you're able to tell like your oxygen levels. And I'm thinking, well, I'm 22 weeks pregnant. I'm always not always out of breath, but I'm out of breath a lot more than I normally am. So it's really hard to tell. But they didn't say anything about a fever. And I remember Monday night was the last night I felt my daughter move. And I called them and I'm telling them, like, well, I haven't felt her move last night. And this was Tuesday morning. I haven't felt her move since last night. And they're like, well, those kind of things happen. I'm like, well, I've tested positive for COVID. And they're like, yeah, well, you just need to rest, stay hydrated. I'm like, okay. So then I started to get connected with my daughter and learn her kicks. And she missed her like 10 o'clock kick, 10 a.m. kick. And I'm like, okay, maybe she's just, tired. My body's going through a lot. It's fighting off this virus. And then 3 o'clock comes and she didn't kick. This is still Tuesday. And she still didn't kick on Tuesday. And I'm like, okay. So at 5 o'clock, I called my midwife again. I'm like, I still haven't felt my daughter move. They didn't answer the phone. I called them at 6, still didn't answer the phone. I'm like, okay. I left the message, still nothing, no callback, no anything. So I downloaded this app on the phone where you're able to hear your baby's heartbeat. I'm not sure what it's called. It's like Boom or something like that. I don't remember the app. But I put it up to mine and I heard mine. And I'm like, okay, so it's not false. Like you can really hear a heartbeat. And I put it on my stomach and I didn't hear anything. I'm like, well, maybe, I'm just not doing it right. It detects my heartbeat because it's a little bit stronger than hers. So like, I'll just wait to call my midwife again in the morning, Wednesday morning. And Wednesday morning comes and again, no movement. So not only were my daughter's last kicks on Monday night, all day Tuesday she had moved. And I knew something was wrong because even on her ultrasound that went the Wednesday before I tested, she was active. I mean, she had her hands in her mouth, feet in her mouth, everything. So I'm like, something is wrong because this little girl she's never not moving. So I called my midwife again. And I'm like, I left you all a message. And they're like, well, we didn't have a nurse here. So we couldn't answer your phone call. And in my mind, I'm like, why don't you have a nurse that's able to answer questions if I tested positive? Like this virus is killing millions of people, and you have no answers for a woman who's pregnant. That to me, that was just mind blowing, and it pissed me off a little bit. Well, a lot, I should say. Um, so I called her and I'm like, well, I haven't felt my daughter move. I called you all and told you all I haven't felt her move. And I tested positive for COVID. And it was like they were so scared that the last resort was bringing me in. And they're, well, drink some cold water, get on all fours, move around, see if that'll get up moving. And I'm like, okay, so I drink cold water, feel nothing. I move around on all fours, feel nothing. And then I laid down. And when I laid down, I felt like a small balloon that just popped of water and it just popped. I'm like, okay, that's weird. So I immediately get up and go to the bathroom. Get up and go to the bathroom, pull down my pants, and I see like blood. I sit on the toilet, and then 2 seconds later, it's just this gush of blood that comes down, clots and clots. And I knew immediately right then that my daughter was gone. I knew that there was no way she had survived anything. And the crazy part about it is Monday when I checked my temperature and it was 103, 103.8. And if I had known that that temperature was extremely high, I would have called them and said, I need y'all to monitor me. Like, I don't care what you have to do, monitor me because my temperature is high. But I didn't know to come in if my temperature was that high because I was only told to come in if I was having shortness of breath or if my oxygen level was too low. And I remember saying, I really hope my daughter make it because I was shivering. Like I knew my body was going into such a shock and I was struggling to even eat and to even just exist because it was so, like I had on hoodies and sweatpants all day just to see if I can sweat the fever out. I got in the tub to see if I can just wet it out. Anything. I was trying to do anything. And I knew when I saw all that blood that my daughter was gone. And I called my midwife and said, I'm bleeding and I'm in tears at this point. And they're like, okay, we'll come in and come to triage. I'm like, okay. So I call my sister next and I'm like, you gotta come get me because I'm bleeding. And she could tell in my voice that like she needs to come down. She got off the phone and called my mom. And then I got off the phone with her and called my boyfriend who was at work. And he can't believe it. My sister gets there. I hadn't stopped bleeding. I'm still bleeding. I put on my leggings and my t-shirt and everything, and I stopped and I said it feels like I'm in labor. Now, how I know what labor feels like, I have no idea because, like I said, I haven't been pregnant. But I feel like when you find out that you're getting ready to become a mom, you associate yourself with different feelings. So you're able to connect with your body in such a way where you can describe a feeling that you're having. And in that moment, I felt like I was in labor. That was the only word that I could use to describe my feeling at that point. And my sister looked at me and she was like, let's just go. So we leave and I remember it's raining. We're at a stoplight. And I'm in the backseat of my sister's car. My niece is in the front. She's 9 years old. And I hear my sister say, no, 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 no. Then I hear a boom. Someone ran into my sister, like, side of her car. And the car just jerks. You know, thankfully, no one was hurt. It was just like a little fender bender where they hit the side of her car. And not even 5 seconds, not 5 minutes, my mom is like pulling up to where we are. And she's just in full mama bear mode. And when I got out the car, I not only leaked through my pants, I'm leaking on my sister's sheet. Like, she had a seat in the, not a sheet in the backseat of her car. And I'm leaking through my pants onto this sheet. So I take the sheet, get into my mama's car, and my mama's driving me to Mercy Hospital in St. Louis. We get there, and I'm thinking that someone is going to be there to take me, because I'm not only bleeding, but I'm pregnant. So I felt like it was a priority, but that was just me. And I get out the car and I'm like, Mom, I can't walk. Like, every step that I take, I'm bleeding. So she parks and goes get a wheelchair. And she's like, my daughter is out here. Like, she's pregnant, she's bleeding, she needs a wheelchair. Thank God for my mom, because she gives me a wheelchair and we roll in. And from there, it's kind of like nonchalant. I'm like, yeah, I called to let you all know I was bleeding and I'm pregnant and I have COVID. And they're like, okay, go to the bank. It was like they already knew that my daughter had their lack of urgency. I'm like, do you all not know what's going on? And so I get in there, I get into this room, and at this point, I'm bleeding so much, I'm starting to get weak. And my mom's there, and the lady comes in, and my mom said, well, when's your due date? And I said, well, it was March 29th. And she's like, no, don't think like that. Don't think like that. But of course, she's my mom. She's trying to be optimistic. But me, being a mother myself now, I know that my daughter is gone. They pulled the ultrasound, and they couldn't find a heartbeat. And that was, again, something I already knew, but it just put it into more of reality, because now it's confirmed. And I see her little body on the ultrasound just going back and forth. And of course, the fluid is pushing her. And by then, I knew that I was saying goodbye to my daughter. And Monday, the last kicks that I felt were her last kick. So they take me up, and at this point, I know that I have to deliver her. It's not, again, I'm 22 weeks. That's basically 5 months. So I know you can't just give me medicine and the tissue just comes out naturally like a miscarriage. I had to deliver her. I had to go through the pains of labor and everything. And my mind went back to when I was at my house, and I told my sister that I was in labor, because I indeed was in labor. So that was very traumatizing, because here I am thinking that everything was going to be okay, and it's not. And I get to meet my daughter, but I get to meet her sleeping. From there, I labored for that entire night. That was Wednesday. I labored the entire day Wednesday, still bleeding. Then my doctors come in, and they tell me that I experienced a placental abruption. And Erica, I know you know all about this, because I've been following you since episode 1 of your podcast. And I basically had a full-on level 4 placental abruption. And the reason why the blood came like it did was because it was in the back of, I believe, my uterus. So I didn't bleed right away. It waited a minute, the blood like filled up, and that's when, you know, everything that happened. So they knew that I had to deliver in order to stop bleeding. They came in and said that I was diagnosed with DIC, but that had nothing to do with my daughter passing. I believe it's just when your blood is not clotting. I don't know. I was so out of it. So some of the medical terms are sitting with me. I believe it was de-icing. So I labored all day, all night Wednesday, and they had to give me medicine to induce my labor. And from that point, I decided instead of doing a natural birth, I was just going to go ahead and do the epidural. And I decided to do the epidural because not only I don't have to prove anything, like I don't have to prove that I'm strong enough to do a natural birth. I'm at this point grieving. So grieving, on top of having to deliver, I wasn't in any emotional state to deal with any kind of pain, because the pain of losing my daughter had already it it was so overwhelming that I didn't want to think about anything else. So they induced me, and I got epidural, and I still wasn't delivering. Like I was only 1 centimeter dilated Thursday morning when my OB came in. Now, mind you, never saw my midwives. This was my first time seeing a new OB, like, because I had to go up to labor and delivery. I didn't see a midwife. The OBGYN came in and said, okay, we got to deliver the baby. Your only two options are to deliver vaginally, or we'll have to do a surgical removal. And basically, if I do a surgical removal, I won't be able to see her or hold her, because I believe they go in and they take pieces of her. I'm not sure. I didn't even want to ask. I knew it then that I was going to deliver my baby whole. There's no way you're going to pull my daughter out in pieces. Do whatever you got to do to make sure that I deliver her whole. So they broke my water, and they came back, I think like 10 or 15 minutes after that. And she checked and she said, okay, we're ready. And at 10:53, November 26, 2020, my daughter Danielle was born sleeping. And I got to hold her, and I got to kiss her. And my mom got to hold her. My mom got to help me push and everything. So I'm pretty sure that was a great experience for her under the circumstances. But um, that's that's the story of my baby girl Danielle. Um, After I delivered her, my placenta came right out. I didn't have to do anything, and that let me know that everything was okay. And immediately after that, the bleeding sort of calmed down, and it sort of stopped. So I'm guessing that was my body just, I had to get her out in order for me to survive, because I listened to all these stories about um, women who've experienced placental abruptions, and it's just by the grace of God that I made it as well. And I don't take that away from that experience, is that even though I'm devastated, I am also grateful that He spared my life. After that, I got pathology on my placenta. I decided not to get one on my daughter because she was perfectly healthy in my eyes, and she had everything. I mean, she just had to grow into her body. So I decided not to get anything on her. And then prior to that, I've gotten many different tests to see if she would have any deficiencies or anything like that. So everything came back normal. So I decided to not do anything with her. They just tested my placenta. And what they did was they found that my, for whatever reason, it caused it to clot. And because it caused it to clot, my blood wasn't going to my placenta to give to my daughter. I believe that's how it is. Um, so after that, I was discharged that night, because my blood and my stats had started to go up. I ended up having to have 4 blood transfusions because I had lost so much blood. I became anemic. And I was discharged that night. And then it's still COVID. My mom was the only one able to be there. My doula was on the phone, ready, and my sister came up when my mom left to see Danielle. And I was discharged at night. And to go home without a baby, I feel like it's just the most excruciating pain that you can't even describe, because you don't think that would ever happen. But it definitely happened, and it was still a blessing to see her and to kiss her and love on her as I would have if she was here. But that's my story.
Wow, what an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. So, they discharged you the same day, and at this point you still had COVID, right? You were on the other, starting to still recover from it, right?
Yeah.
So what did you do? Were they able to do any other memorial or, rituals with you while you were still in a hospital before you had to actually leave?
They sent up they sent, well, my dad's a pastor, so I FaceTimed him and he prayed over my daughter. But it's funny that you say that, because the whole time while I was in the hospital, I didn't have a fever. Now, when Monday I told you my fever was like 103, then Wednesday when they tested me, Thursday when they tested me, I didn't have a fever or anything like that. And by that time, if you don't have a fever, they don't think you're contagious. I was able to take her, not take her, but leave her and then have a memorial for her. The funeral home went and got her body, and we had just a burial. We skipped the funeral arrangements, everything. We just had a private burial for her. So we were able to honor her in that way. But I still, I still had COVID, but I was coming down. I had isolated for, I think, let's see, Thursday I tested positive, so I probably had COVID before then. So by the time I delivered her, I was already like a week into quarantine. And I believe you only have to do it for like 7 or 10 days at that point.
So you all were able to have a burial for her. So tell us about the burial process and how you all prepared for it. And then what was those next few weeks like, really, as you recovered from COVID and really started to grieve?
Mm-hmm. The process of the burial was, we knew we wanted to have her at like our family cemetery. So we called a couple of funeral homes, and thankfully, if a baby is, because after 20 weeks, the hospital doesn't do anything, like you can't leave the baby at the hospital or anything. You have to take your baby or the baby will be cremated. So I decided to just do everything myself, and my mom did too. We decided to just, we were going to take her, and we're going to take care of her. And we called, and thankfully, babies or infants, they don't charge. The funeral home, they don't charge you anything. They provide the services for free in Missouri for the most part. So we called and we were able to arrange everything. The only thing we had to pay for was her little casket, and um, which was nice thing to do. So you don't have to worry about money and where all that is going to come from. It was very affordable. Um, and then we just had to pay to bury her. So the cemetery charges to bury her. Some cemeteries will do it for free for infants, but the one that I wanted her at was they charged to bury her. So the funeral, not the funeral, but the burial was very intimate. It was her father and I, our parents, and just really her village, like everyone who would have been watching her and who would have been growing and helping her grow up. They were all there, and we did a balloon release for her December. But during that entire time, like coming home, still having to be isolated, um, it was it was harder because I had to grieve it alone, not necessarily alone like emotionally, but physically. Like people, I didn't want anyone to come around because again, the virus is killing a lot of people. But by the grace of God, my mom was so close to me. Again, she was holding my hand while I delivered. She didn't get COVID not one time. And that was so amazing to me because she definitely could have got it. I mean, the way that she was holding me and loving on me, she definitely could have got it. And she's 60 years old. So it that part, it wasn't nothing but the grace of God. But people called and checked on me, but it was rough. It was definitely the lowest of the lowest of the lows, because I didn't want anyone around to catch it. But luckily, I was just coming out of my quarantine, so it wasn't as bad. My boyfriend takes care of his father. His father is 75 years old, and he's already had a stroke. So it was extremely hard not having him there, because he's grieving, I'm grieving, and parents can't grieve their child together. It was devastating. It was devastating, and I didn't know how I would come back from that, but I'm here. Um, the recovery process from COVID, again, after I delivered my daughter, I was fine. I think I got my taste and smell back within like 2 or 3 days, and it was okay. The hard part about it was the physical aspect, because I lost so much blood, and then I um, really wasn't eating a lot when I had COVID because my senses were messed up. My brain wasn't telling my body to eat, so it was hard. So I lost a ton of weight. So it was really hard physically to recover from that, as well. But recovering from COVID was, I think I did more focusing on breathing and actually recovering. And I had people who were like my mom, who were willing to be around me no matter the diagnosis. So I wasn't 100% alone, which is definitely a blessing in my eyes.
Well, that's good. I'm so happy that you had the support system around you to help you as you navigated it. Because I think that that's the most lonely in general, but definitely when you can't physically have the people who would normally be in your presence just to love on you and support you, but they were there. So how was Christmas? Because all this happened around the holidays as you were going into Thanksgiving, as you were going into Christmas. How was going into the holiday season as you really navigated grief and loss?
Well, I delivered her Thanksgiving Day of 2020. So going forward, I don't think Thanksgiving will ever be the same. But going into Christmas, whew, I had to truly prepare myself and surround myself with people who also grieved Danielle, who also lost a granddaughter, who lost a niece, who lost a cousin, because it was very dark. I mean, you see people, and I had to get off social media. So I really didn't see what other people were doing on social media. I just knew that around Christmas, everybody was around family. And I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to relax and just surround myself with people who I knew were grieving with me. And that made it 10 times better because I wasn't going through it alone. Um, it made me feel loved, but it still was hard because I imagined Christmas me being super big, buying gifts for our baby, setting up nurseries around that time, and I didn't get to do any of that, and it was extremely devastating. But I had my circle. I had my circle around me and I didn't have to say anything to them. I didn't have to say, I want you all to be around me on Christmas or New Year. And I didn't have to say that. They knew. Like they knew to not leave me alone. They knew to not check up on me. I at least heard from my mom and my sister every day. If I didn't answer the phone within like 2 or 3 hours, my sister's popping up. Like, I need to see you. I need to see your face. Um, so I'm thankful that even though I was down, I didn't stay down. Like I had a village that didn't let me stay down. So holidays were extremely hard, but I'm still thankful they weren't as hard because I wasn't alone.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. So tell us, how are you now? It's been a few months. We're into the new year, going into the summertime. How has your grieving journey been so far, up until now?
It's it's been definitely a journey. I found that saying my daughter's name, honoring her, she existed, and acknowledging that she existed has definitely made me joyful. Um, I turned 30 March 7th, and her due date was March 29th. So for my 30th, and I posted on the Sisters in Loss community Facebook page. I honored her with the photo shoot, and that's how I grieve. I grieve by honoring her. I go see her at the cemetery, and it's still rough because now my boyfriend and I are talking about trying again. And of course, not only was this my first pregnancy, but this is my first pregnancy loss. So now any other pregnancies, I feel like it's going to be, I'm going to have a lot of anxiety. But I correlate grieving because I have all this love to give to my daughter, and that's what grief is. It's love and with nowhere to go. So I have all this love for her, a mother's love, and I don't have a baby physically to give it to. But let's not forget, I do have a child, and I pour all of that energy and all that love into honoring my daughter. I have a necklace with her name on it. So everywhere I go, you're going to see her and you're going to know her name. And that's how I grieve. I grieve by honoring her and acknowledging that she in fact existed, whether I got to take her home or not. She existed. And for that we grieve, and also for that we honor.
I love that. I love that. Absolutely love that. And I'm so honored that you allow us to share this story here in the platform, and you're part of the community. So I always like to leave the listeners with encouraging words. And we still are in a time of uncertainty right now where, a lot of people are getting vaccinated, but still a lot of folks are dying from this virus. I would love for you to leave our listeners with some encouraging words as they continue to navigate their journey to motherhood.
To the mothers who have lost babies, again, honor your babies. For her due date, we decided that we were going to go to the cemetery, and we just said small words over her grave, and we released balloons. So, if you're in a place where you don't feel like you're getting the best care for your child, advocate for yourself and your child, because that's what I feel like I would have done or I should have done. Continue to pray and trust the process that God has given you. Get into the word and believe that God will give you the desires of your heart. You have to truly, truly believe it. Don't give up. Surround yourself with people who will love on you. And I mean only you. Stay away from people who are absorbed, and they don't acknowledge where you are. Be around people that's going to say your child's name just like you will. I love that my mom and my sister include Danielle in everything that we do. Um, they acknowledge her as my mom as her grandchild, and never be afraid to speak out. about your child. I'm ready for when people ask me, hey, do you have any children? I sure do. I sure do. I have a daughter. So channel your child's soul by speaking their name, saying their name, and surround yourself with people that's going to love you, not fake love you, not be around for a time period. Because the hardest times after you bury a child is just that, after you bury your child. So be around people that's going to support you and love on you, because you're going to grieve for the rest of your life. So be around that and seek answers for yourself. I'm not sure what the next pregnancy will look like. I do 100% honestly feel like COVID had a huge part to play in my loss. So seek answers for yourself if you don't know. And again, honor your babies.
Yes, thank you so much, Leslie, for sharing your story. Where can our listeners connect with you after this episode?
Well, I have a business page. So my business page is Body Beauty SS. That's BODYBEAUTYSS. That's my business page. That's on Instagram, by the way. My business name is on Instagram, by the way. And I'm also on Instagram at Scrap with a K. So that's Scrap, SKRAPPWITHA_K. You can find me there on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook under Scrap Damper.
Thank you again, Leslie, for sharing your story and your light with us. And we are going to continue to follow your journey as you navigate grief and trying to conceive in your journey to motherhood.
Thank you so much, Erica. Thank you for this platform. I've been blessed to have found you all. My doula actually gave me your link, so I'm thankful for her. So just thank you for this platform for mothers who don't get to talk about it often.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. We got you. Thank you for listening to today's episode. For show notes, go to sistersinloss.com. To stay connected with us and join the Sisters in Loss community and receive my weekly newsletter, please go to sistersinloss.com/newsletter. That is sistersinloss.com/newsletter. Please rate and review this episode, and I will talk to you next week.